Okay, yes, there you are. We're going to switch to English because Kel O'Neill is not a Dutch speaking filmmaker, but Eline, you are. But we're going to do this in English. Maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us what kind of, what you make, what kind of films and documentaries you make.
Sure. Hi, my name is Eline Jongma, and together with Kel O'Neill, we are a new media artist filmmaking duo, which means to us that we make documentaries not just for television, but also for new media platforms, or we make interactive work, we make virtual reality documentaries, or AR filters that are all rooted in reality. So they are, as we say, non-fiction films.
Okay.
That's what we do.
Okay. And you made the Instagram documentary, His Name is My Name. And first we're going to watch the trailer.
This is the story of a man named Gerrit Jongsma. He was a member of the Dutch SS and a Jew hunter whose signature damned at least one family to their deaths. And he was also my great-grandfather. But until recently, I had never even heard his name.
Yes, okay. Well, my first question for you is, what was your motivation to make the Instagram documentary? Why did you make this?
Okay, so there's two different ways to look at that question. The first is, why did we make this project overall? Like, what was the creative, spiritual motivation for making it? And then the other question is, why Instagram?
Yeah. Maybe first the first part.
Sure.
Why this project?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when we moved to the Netherlands 2 years ago, we were just having a conversation about where Eline grew up. She grew up in the north, near Westerbork in Oslo. She told me this story about how she, as a kid, used to go out and forage mushrooms. And they would go to the camp and they would pick mushrooms, and then they would cook them up for pasta or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was something about that story that really stuck in my mind, because it seemed like such a strange thing to do, to be honest. Because I didn't understand at that point that Westerbork was a transit camp. I thought that it was a death camp. So something about pulling these mushrooms out of haunted soil just stuck in our minds. And then spontaneously, we received a request from Westerbork, or actually from a coalition of different transit camps and concentration camps in Europe, who were making a collective art project called Houses of Darkness. And they said, do you want to pitch on this? Do you have any ideas about projects having to do with Westerbork? Yeah. And immediately this light went on, and it was like destiny. Almost. And we felt like we had to start with that little seed and build some kind of larger project. And Eline was daring enough to allow, to tell her own story, but also to allow a group of people that we brought together to all work together to tell her story on this new platform.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
that
should add to that I didn't find out about this history until quite recently, which is why I think it was interesting for us to maybe explore creating a story around it.
Yeah. Okay. And can you tell me something about Instagram? Why on Instagram?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a fractured history. So, like Eline said, she didn't know about any of this growing up. So you can only take little bits, and they don't necessarily come together to form a coherent story that you can understand. You have these little moments, and in the little moments, in these little vignettes, we decided that we could try to distribute in kind of a networked way. So, like, you have, 10 different films that you can technically watch in any order that you want to, and they can be shared out through stories. But if you want to watch them all the way through, you can do that way as well. It
Because
just
there are
felt
10 episodes, I saw.
Yeah, there are 10 episodes and an augmented reality experience, right? So it felt like there was a way to bring little like pockets of narrative to a larger audience, and also to reflect this whole mushroom concept, right?
Yeah.
Because the way that mushrooms work, they're connected by mycelial networks, right? Which are these network sort of threads that work in a very similar way to social media.
Yeah.
So, like, the concept kind of just seemed to come together in this nice way. And it's funny because as I'm saying it, it sounds really like high-minded and arty, but it's really raw. You know what I mean? It's actually it's quite a like direct story. All this stuff is just the architecture in the background.
Also, we were targeting young people, and we figured you take away as many barriers as you can.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
You use social media, you use...
And did you have that specific audience in your minds?
Absolutely,
young
yeah.
people,
Very
yeah,
much.
okay, young adults, okay, yeah.
I mean, it's sort of like this work is sort of created in this sort of confessional way, right? And this is also, again, sort of a play on like how people are using social media to sort of, give a better representation of who they are. And, we figured identity is something that young people are very concerned with. And it's something that is also somewhat the topic of this documentary, right? So the idea that you're trying to reach people who are trying to figure out who they are, and maybe sort of some of them get lost in the weeds a little bit with this, including my ancestors. So who wasn't that young, to be honest. He should have known better, but these are all things that were on our mind.
So you're talking about identity, and is there more that you want the viewer to take from the documentary after they watched it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we like very directly say it in the augmented reality portion. In the AR experience, you basically start, you start it and you start training your phone around, and all of your environment starts to populate with the characters and the environments from the film, right? And there's a big sign that says, "His world is your world."
Yeah, and you do the AR experience in Westerbork.
You do the AR experience wherever you want.
You can do it everywhere. Okay.
Yeah, so actually this is a fun thing. On Instagram, there's a little, most people probably know this, but there's a little set of diamonds on the Instagram page, like in the little like interaction row.
Yeah.
You press that, then that actually gives you access to the Instagram filter.
Okay.
But it's funny because we've looked at the data of who uses this, right? Instagram filters and AR are mostly used in like Asia. So like our power users for the AR experience are all in Indonesia and India. Here, like even when the film showed at IDFA, Doc Lab, which is one of the most, forward-thinking, creative platforms for this kind of work, we had curators asking us, so when are you going to release the augmented reality? Because they didn't know that like the AR filter was just right there.
But the young adults, do they know?
A lot of them do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say one of the side effects of Instagram as a primary platform is that you get direct feedback. not just in comments, but you actually get the data, right?
Yeah.
So, we've churned through the data, and most of the people who are watching are young women. The top 5 countries, I think, are like the Netherlands, the US. I was surprised Iran was like the 5th country. The young women are primarily, I think it was like under 25. It's either under
It's
25 or under
interesting because you can
21.
see the statistics about it. Yeah.
Statistics,
Statistics,
absolutely.
sorry.
And then on the augmented reality, it's pretty much like, the early adopters of that stuff are all in Asia. So it's quite fun. But the message of the augmented reality essentially is like, his world is your world.
Yeah.
There are parallels to draw between the rise of fascism in the 30s and 40s and where we are right now. And we can steer around it if we have enough self-awareness. And also if we're aware of the fact that depending on our choices, we could end up being erased from family histories because what we've done is so bad.
Yeah, the question, what's your story, what's your history? Yeah. And if you think about burgerschapsonderwijs, how do you see teachers can use your documentary in their lessons? Do you have an idea?
Well, this is funny because I would never encourage a teacher to tell students to take out their phone and their Instagram profile in the lesson, but that's essentially what this movie is for, right? It's sort of like it's for people with short attention spans, and we very deliberately created very bright colors, and we're really using it's the sound and the music is all optimized for mobile phone use, so it's supposed to really draw you in. But how can you talk about this project in your class? I think it's very important to acknowledge that this part of the history of the Netherlands, the part of collaborators during World War II, hasn't really been addressed to the extent that maybe some other aspects of World War II have been. And I think it's part of the story, right? So it's a very sort of restricted and still very shameful part of our history, but you do have to break it open at some point because you have to learn from it, right? Yeah. And that's, I think we're still very much in the kinderschoenen with this. I know that, one of the things that we address is that the National Archive currently, when it comes to convicted collaborators, those archives are not really public. So
it's also in the documentary.
Yes, it is. So this is an interesting thing to discuss, of course, with your class. Like, should these archives be public? Should they be secret? But our position is, and in that sense, it's I can use myself as an example. For this documentary, didn't have to convince anybody else to expose all kinds of things about themselves. But I'm putting myself out there. So in that sense, it's easier to discuss things, right? And maybe students have questions for their great-grandparents or grandparents, or maybe there are parts of family history that they want to explore, that tells them more about this society or whatever society their grandparents were from.
Yeah, maybe it can be a call to action to know more about your own history.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. And do you see resemblances in the story of Gerrit and the now, as we look at the theme polarization?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, can you tell me something about that?
Well, Jesus, we were coming from the US when we made this. And, January 6th happened while we were conceiving of it. So it's an incredibly polarized world. I think obviously the polarization that's happening in the Netherlands is absorbed somewhat by the political system because there are so many political parties and it's, sort of spread out.
Yeah.
So even within that polarization, it absorbs it a bit more. But yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it's funny. I was just going to say, you know, when there was a moment when there were all of these protests happening about the migrant centers in the Netherlands. And there was an image that really stuck with us of these young kids with these flags that said, it was like, ons land, no, what was it? Yeah, eigen volk eerst, right?
Yeah.
Something about eigen volk eerst.
It's only gotten
right?
worse
Eigen
since.
volk eerst, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's like straight out of the NSB playbook.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
I mean, to the point where we actually deliberately use that phrase in the film.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You see it then. Okay.
So yeah, the parallels are easy to draw.
So maybe it can be like a mirror. Do you know what it means?
Yeah.
Right, like nobody's going into a protest or into a conviction that they have about a topic thinking that they're on the wrong side of history, right? But some of us do end up there, and I think that was a big inspiration for us, and it's really important to educate people in that sense and be very direct about it, right? Like, what does it mean, you know? To add something to our time in the US, what was interesting and disturbing about the Trump presidency, which was really different from any other president that I've seen, including Bush, in my time, many years in the States, is that the quick rise and normalization of certain rhetoric. And that was really a sight to be seen from up close. Just the normalization of like villainizing certain parts of the population, and then how that progressed just over the course of 3 years was really, really, really disturbing. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to happen here, not at all. But we do believe as filmmakers, you know, sometimes you have a bit of an activist role in things, and we do believe that, there seem to be some gaps in what people understand about their national identity, specifically in the 1930s. The 1930s, I would point out even more than the 1940s.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, well, I can talk with you for longer, but we are in a webinar, and I also have some questions here from the chat. A question from Mehmet. If you don't have Instagram, can you also see the documentary somewhere else?
Yes, we've put it up on our Vimeo channel.
Okay. Vimeo.
And first of all, Mehmet, congratulations. Good choice. It's a cesspool and a hell pit.
By not using social media.
Yeah. It's well done. But it's also up on we don't really do much with our YouTube page, but I believe it's up there as well.
Okay. Yeah. Just search for Jongsma and O'Neill, and then you will find it, I guess. And then I have a question from Tim. What kind of assignments would you give students related to your documentary? His name is my name. Do you know an assignment?
That's interesting. I'd rather get people making their own work than necessarily like reflecting on what we've done. Like, I'd rather that it serves as some point of inspiration for their own work, their own independently created work. There just needs to be more filmmaking done.
That's maybe also an assignment to make something about your own family history or about
absolutely.
family history. Yeah. Okay, so you're just going to make something. Okay. Thank you very much for being here. Yes, very interesting. And well, I can say watch it because it's a beautiful documentary. So also thanks for making it.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having
All
us.
right. Yes.
Good luck.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.